And as someone that manages a team, it's very important that I ensure that my team is also that they have a healthy work life balance and that I am mindful of the work that is being assigned, the tasks that I'm asking of them. And even when I do my check ins, I do bi weekly check ins with my entire team where I do one on one sit downs. And whether we are talking about work or not, I always try to kind of temperature check and see where people are at in terms of their own personal work life balance. So that's something that's really important to me. And I find, yeah, it's really easy to kind of get away from that. Is it a tech podcast? Well, technically, yes. This is the show for current and future techies who are curious about exploring the world of tech. You'll get to hear from exciting guests, highlighting the diversity of roles and careers within the space, how you can get started, but also the life that comes along with it before, during, and after. My name is Stella, and this is the Technically Yes podcast. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Technically Yes podcast. I'm your host, Stella, and I just wanted to come on here and say thank you for such an amazing season. The season 1 of the Technically Yes podcast has officially come to an end, and I just wanted to come on and thank each and every single one of you for listening, tuning in, sharing, reposting, and just doing all the things really. This podcast has been more than I could have anticipated. I've had, when I first started this podcast, I had the idea of creating something that would speak to the older version of myself when I first started in tech and when I wanted to get into tech. And really and truly, it's gone better than I ever could have imagined. The feedback has been absolutely incredible. I got a message the other day from someone that said that this has prompted their journey into the tech space and that because of one of the episodes, they now had a clear picture in terms of the direction that they wanted to take when it comes to tech. And honestly, that's exactly why I'm here. And that makes me super excited. I'm joined today by little Tucker. Say hi, Tucky Wucky. Hi. We're just hanging out. It's been a super long day. I've been trying to record this episode. I can't even tell you how many times I've had audio issues, recording issues. We're literally losing light. But I still wanted to come on here and just thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in and really, yeah, just encouraging me along the way. It's been really exciting. A lot of people have also asked why I'm deciding to break this podcast up into seasons. And the reason for that is really because I want to have a healthy balance between the work that I'm doing and also my personal life. Work-life balance is something that you hear about so often and that is often talked about, but it's one of those things like we all know it, but it's almost elusive in the sense that sometimes it feels unattainable depending on what it is that we're doing. And one of the things I experienced a lot of burnout last year in my old role where I felt super unhappy and it just got to a point where I was working so much and work became so crazy that I burned out and I definitely don't want that to happen again. So that's really why I've chosen to break this podcast up into different seasons so that I can ensure that each and every single season I'm showing up whole, excited, and that I'm bringing you guys tons of value and that I'm just not pushing out content simply because there's a deadline in place. When it comes to work-life balance, my personal opinion of that really is, or my personal definition, I should say, of work-life balance really is self-care, right? And it's being able to juggle work, your personal life, your hobbies, relationships, and all of that good stuff. Do you want to go down or you want to stay? You're so silly. It's finding different ways to juggle all of that. So that's really why I decided to break this podcast up into seasons. For season 2, I have some really exciting guests coming on and some really exciting conversations as well, which I can't wait to show you guys and share with you guys. And yeah, I just wanted to come on here and make sure that we have a conversation around work-life balance. And really what's prompting this is if you're in Canada, you're probably familiar with them. CAMH was in my office this week, and we had a lot of discussions around mental health and the importance of, having a good work-life balance. For those that are not Canadian, CAMH is the Canadian Association of Mental Health. And yeah, that's a topic that was sort of the topic of the week and what we've been talking about. And as someone that manages a team, it's very important that I ensure that my team is also that they have a healthy work life balance and that I am mindful of the work that is being assigned, the tasks that I'm asking of them. And even when I do my check ins, I do bi weekly check ins with my entire team where I do one on one sit downs. And whether we are talking about work or not, I always try to kind of temperature check and see where people are at in terms of their own personal work life balance. So that's something that's really important to me. And I find, yeah, it's really easy to kind of get away from that, whether it's financial struggles, like we live in a really expensive city, and with recent interest rate hikes, things like that, there's a lot of stressors on a lot of people trying to make ends meet, maybe picking up second jobs or, yeah, just things like that, right? So there's a lot of factors as to why that can kind of become unbalanced. But I always try to ensure that with everything that I do, whether it's with my team or even with myself, that I am finding different ways to improve my work life balance. So, some tips and ways that you can improve your work life balance, I definitely say first and foremost is if you feel like things are getting a bit too tough or you're taking on too much, learn how to say no. When it comes to certain tasks, or whether it's a hobby, side hustle, things like that, it's really important to set those boundaries and figure out what is healthy and what is ultimately unhealthy for you and what will not aid in your personal sort of growth, development, and happiness, really. So, learning how to say no is really important and will certainly help you along the way. Another way that I find can really help is learning how to take breaks. Break up your day, whether it's like going for a walk when you have time during the day, ensure that you're outside getting fresh air, moving your body, things like that. Another one is actually taking your lunches. I was really bad at taking my lunches when I first started working from home. It was one of those things. I'd never worked from home before. I was very used to just going into an office, things like that. And I found that I was constantly working through my lunch. I wouldn't even take lunch. And if I was taking lunch, I was like taking lunch at my desk and eating really quickly or eating during really stressful times. Like I wasn't really meal prepping or anything like that. One second. Tucker's upset. You're upset. All right, I'm back. So yeah, one of the things I noticed that I wasn't really taking lunches when I should have, right? And if I was taking lunch, I find that a lot of times I was taking it at my desk. I was eating really quickly, and that in itself is a whole nother problem. I have done some research around what it means to eat while you're in a state of stress or in a state of panic. And basically, there's studies that show that the nutrient intake is not really the same. So yeah, we really want to be mindful of that, making sure that you are actually utilizing your lunch breaks, taking the time to, yeah, just sit down, disconnect, step away from your computer, and things like that. Another thing that you really should consider as well is communicating with your manager, communicating with your team, asking for that flexibility. Another way to really prioritize that work-life balance is to just simply ask for flexibility from your manager, your boss, what have you. I think that's also really important. Communicate your needs, whether it's, asking for a shorter work week or flex time, things like that. One thing I do know is like if you don't ask, you shall not receive. And it's really important to just put your needs and wants out there. It's hard to tell how someone's going to respond, but really ensure that you are at least asking for what it is that you need. On top of that, really and truly, is ensure that you are prioritizing your relationships. Carve out time in your schedule for times with your friends, time with your family, things like that. I find it's also easy to forget how important that is. And you might get off work and then you're exhausted, tired, and you kind of just like, you know, eat, go to bed, and then before you know it, you're back at your work day. Or let's say you're so tired from the work week that you end up doing nothing on the weekends, and then before you know it, it's Monday again. So really take the time to also prioritize those relationships. Ensure that you are scheduling time in with your friends and family whenever you can. I know sometimes it's a bit easier said than done, especially when you are tired, but even just, FaceTime calls, going for a walk with a friend, someone in the neighborhood can also be very helpful in terms of making sure that you are creating that work-life balance. When it comes to work-life balance, I find it's one of those things, it's not necessarily a goal that one can achieve, like it's ever evolving. And it's something that you have to consider, that it does change a lot. It does change a lot along the way. So we should focus more so on the little things that we can do every single day in order to achieve that, versus saying or thinking that there's a certain achievement that you're looking for, right? Like when I get to this point, when I'm only working these hours, then I'll have a healthy work-life balance, because it's something that you really have to be intentional and proactive in trying to accomplish. So that's really one of the reasons as to why I decided to break this podcast up into seasons. I want to ensure that each and every single time that I am showing up for you guys every single week, that I'm bringing tons of value, and that I do not experience that burnout, and then essentially that I'm just putting out content for content's sake and not giving you guys tons of value along the way. So with that being said, I want to thank you again for tuning into the first season of the Technically Yes podcast. My name is Stella. As always, I'm your host, and I can't wait to see you guys in season 2. Until then, take care. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the Technically Yes podcast. If you like today's episode, rate this podcast 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you would like to get in touch with me, reach out to me on Instagram at the Tech Yes Pod, and find me and subscribe on YouTube by looking up the Technically Yes podcast. Thanks again, and chat to you guys next week.